Hello, folks. We are live. I'm going to pull back the music here a little bit so you can hear us. All right, I see us. Jonathan, give me a quick sound check as usual, please.
Sound check as usual.
I hear you. Okay, we good. Should be good. Yeah, such healthy food. Yeah, the chat room is already here. Our good friend Dan is here. Dan, good to see you. Good to see you. What can I do for you? I can do I can do a chicken dance for you. All right, so good. Well, it's not morning anymore for me. It's Eastern time, so good.
Right.
Good afternoon here. If you're joining us from the Americas, it's still West Coast, and good morning. So if you're anywhere else in the world, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to Code Live. We are starting up our regular week of schedule of streams for the week. We start out with CMSs on Monday, which is this one, and we have a podcast recording we do on Monday evenings. We do Unity on Tuesdays. We do React and UI on Wednesdays. Thursdays is all things Xamarin and XAML, and Fridays we kind of end with a chat show. So come and join us whenever your time permits, and good to have you all here if you're watching this live or later on. My name is Sam Basu. I am a dev advocate at Progress Software, and with me I have my good friend Jonathan Reed. So introduce yourself, please.
Hey, Sam. Yeah, thanks for having me again. Jonathan Reed, Solutions Engineer with Progress Sitefinity.
Sweet. So this is our time of the week where Jonathan gets frustrated with a complete noob who doesn't know anything about CMSs. So I'm trying to learn. In fact, you're looking at Jonathan's desktop actually. So he's sharing and he's teaching me how to take design and a concept and a sample website and build it all out with custom content, CMS features with Sitefinity and all that good stuff. So we've been at this for like 5 weeks now, Jonathan.
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. I was actually just, as you were introducing here, I was just trying to think about which, maybe we should have some type of numbering system or something, huh? We're getting quite a few of these. Yeah, I think it is 5, though. I think you're right.
Yeah, and we are giving away swag, so you're going to get a beautiful custom sticker and a exclusively printed t-shirt that Jonathan has secured, and we're going to ship it to you wherever you are. So we will have trivia question come up, probably half an hour, and I can repeat that a couple of times until you get it. So look for that probably half an hour from now, and I'll pop it over in the stream itself. So if you have, you can look up, you can Google it, but you'll have to know exactly what you're looking for. So with that, Jonathan, let's dive in where you left off.
Well, that'd be a good question since, here in the America, we took off, well, some of us took off some time last week. So just to kind of recap on where we're at and what we've come across or our realization point is we're still building out Coriander Lane here. Coriander Lane is a global restaurant company. We're going to make use of things like multi-site management and Sitefinity, custom page templates, as well as custom widget templates. We've already created some custom page templates. As you can see, we have represented our header here at the top. And that's really all we have in our page templates to this point in time. And we've also added some widgets and added some CSS and styling utilizing NPM scripts and Sass that comes with Sitefinity out of the box. So to give us some of our styling in here, looks like we need to change some font colors and such, but we'll get there, right?
Yeah.
And then last week we spent a lot of time focusing on the slider here, where we created a custom content type. So within Sitefinity, we're allowed to use something called the module builder. The module builder allows us to create our own structured information or data within Sitefinity, all on a click-first approach. Now, if you guys need any review of these items, don't worry. All previous 4 or 5 videos are all on YouTube, or at least as fast as our team can get them processed onto YouTube. So you guys can head over to YouTube and get any previous videos if you need any recap of what we've accomplished. So what we did was we asked.
So Jonathan, just to they are on YouTube. What we're trying to do is just organize them in a playlist. So right now you can go and find it if you search for Code It Live on the Telerik channel. But we are going to try to better organize things. And before you start off, I want to respond to one thing that our good friend Dan Siegel in the chat room is saying. This is the classic thing. So for those of you who may not know, Sitefinity, we are dealing with ASP.NET. This is running on MVC. So Dan is saying, you're saying I could have avoided building one, and this is the classic like build versus buy type conversation where, I mean, so I'll ask you again to recap this. Like, when should a developer or a team look to get into a CMS for a polished website as compared to building it all by hand?
Oh, building it all by hand. That's really a good question. So it really becomes, a lot of factors. So, when you start to build things on your own, there's some things that become cumbersome. Things like, status management of content items. So managing the status of a page. Is it published? Is it unpublished? Is it draft? Things like workflow, being able to manage that. Plus the ease of use of the drag and drop tooling that, Sitefinity has taken so many years to craft and complete to make sure that you really have the need. But what some people, the inverse argument of that is, well, if I get a CMS, I can't integrate with anything, or it becomes hard or difficult, or I don't know how or where to integrate. What we like to do within, at least Sitefinity, is we like to make those integrations as easy as possible, and we make them in a couple different layers, right? So you can integrate with Sitefinity on the fact of JavaScript or C#, or you can interact on the fact of just using web services, standard REST services. So the things that I typically look at of should you build it custom versus a CMS is, well, do you need to manage things like content lifecycle? Do you need to manage things like approval processes? Those things become difficult and expensive to code. Those are some major areas that we look at. Plus, we're built off the Microsoft stack, so security and those components just come in hand with those. So you start rolling your own things. You then can open yourselves up to other risks, which we've taken the steps and the processes to make sure that you have all the security enhancements that you need, as well as the feature enhancements that you might not. Now, where does custom coding come into play? A lot of areas. I mean, you're going to still custom code things, but you may consider a custom coded application completely if the logic that you need maybe isn't as robust or complex as you might need for publishing or authoring content itself. So keep in mind, CMSs do have authoring capabilities, all built in. Now, the amount of authoring capabilities will vary across CMSs, of course. But those are, again, the typical things that I look for of, do you need them? If you need them, I would strongly suggest, for authoring components, looking at a CMS. From that point, then looking at, can you integrate it? What do you need to integrate with? Do they have pre-built integrations? Do they have open communities? Do they have, weekly Twitch meetings? I don't know. All these things are all great things to, consider when looking across the board. But there are definitely implementations that should be, just custom coded and maybe aren't meant for CMSs. And those would, be, maybe more a simple application, pure just listing of content, or those types of things might be more suited towards a custom build where you don't maybe need all the bells and whistles. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that is very well put. Integrations is where all the magic is.
Right.
And if your CMS does not offer 2 people on a Twitch stream every week, you're doing something wrong.
Yeah, you're probably right.
All right, then, thanks for the question. This was great. All right, so I'll let you dive in. And actually, Jonathan, while we were just getting started, he whispered the trivia question that we want to ask for you to get you that swag. So I'm going to get that in while you get started, Jonathan.
Sure. Yep, just real quick, just logging into one other thing here that I forgot to log into, so give me just a moment. All right, so what I was hoping to cover today, did I finish my recap, Sam? I think I did.
Yeah, I did.
Pretty okay.
Yep.
Yeah, pretty good. All right, cool. Of course, I've been looking maybe for a little bit of feedback from the community here. At this point, we've kind of approached a point where we're going to have to start doing some additional customizations. Most of the things that we've done so far, I wouldn't necessarily call them customizations. They're a typical process in my Sitefinity experience, where we're doing CSS and we're really branding the site to meet our needs. So it's really almost every site that needs to go through this basic process that we've gone through so far. But what we've come into now is the need for maybe some custom capabilities. So let me pull back in our designs here, and you can kind of see where we're at here. But a couple of the things that are in our design process, as I look through, again, I've identified as maybe either not being direct CMS components, or they've been identified either as custom code, or maybe even the potential for the need for third-party data. Third-party data meaning you need to integrate with some other source. So what I'm looking at here is one of the first areas of a potential customization. And we're still really looking at our header and footer and things that we might need to build is this right here up in the top right-hand corner. This is actually labeling the nearest location to me, so our restaurant location. So what we're going to need to do today is we're actually going to need to build out a couple content types, or at least one, to store our restaurant locations. Two, this is also going to get us into a talk about multi-site management and how we're going to manage our say restaurant locations through our site. Do we want to manage them all in the corporate level? Do we want to expand the capabilities of managing locations to other users? How do we best facilitate that management of these locations to other users? Who are those other users? So many questions, Sam.
Yep.
We got to answer all of these things. And as we continue to look through these designs here, let me, where's my little switcher here? We'll also be able to identify a couple other areas that are also on this same component. Why isn't it letting me switch through here? Hang on a second. There we go. That was weird. All right, so let me switch through just a few other designs here just to show you another area where this comes into play. So we have this this component up here in our header that's identifying, say, the closest location, right? Closest location. So, based on my experience with the CMS and other things, I know that this is going to be a custom component. Okay. If you don't have that depth of experience into the CMS, you just start to look around. You can search the documentation. You can see if these things are facilitated throughout. Through our design, we also got to this location page here. On the location page, we have a little bit more inclination about what information that we might need to collect or store about our, say, location. So you can see we have things like, well, probably a title. Looks like we're allowing the capability for reviews or maybe a star rating. Hey, Sam, guess what?
What?
I don't have to write any custom code for that. Sitefinity will offer that for me out of the box, and I'll show you how to set that up. Looks like we also have another component here, something like address. So we probably need a city, state, street, maybe street 2 or whatever you want to call it, zip or postal code. So we need that information. Looks like we have the other opportunity here for hours. So they should be able to set a collection of hours. We have things on 2 rows here. So we then get to start a little thinking process of, do they need multiple entries for hours? Do they need one set of, so you can start to look at things. Do I give them an open text field? How do I do hours? A couple other things kind of pointed or caught my eye here. We have this link for apply for jobs. So how are jobs going to be managed? We haven't really talked about that. And in fact, if we look through our design, we can see if there's any other things related to jobs. But we also see here too that we have now a listing of our locations, and we can maybe glean different information here. Set as preferred. Holy cow, that's a feature, right? how are we gonna set the user to do a preferred location? So we'll have some other custom components that we need to think about here. Should they be able to set it on their user profile so that it persists across device? Should it just be a cookie? I mean, we have lots of opportunities here where we can facilitate different things. So maybe it's getting a little bit more complex than we originally started. There's one other area that I wanted to point out here. Let me see if I can find my jobs listing. Okay, well, I don't have a design for jobs here, so we won't get into that too much today. But today, so we're going to get another quick recap of building a custom content type. We're going to quickly build out our location content type, and then we'll start to work with designing a custom widget. What is a custom widget? A custom widget will allow you to control the full life cycle of a component on the page, meaning you get full access into the model, view, and controller of that particular item. For today, we're going to use the Visual Studio plugin that Sitefinity has to offer. We're going to create a separate class library to show off the separations of concerns and how you can easily, either create reusable components of Sitefinity or just, again, a separation of concern. In this particular case, being some custom logic that we may want to run integration tests, unit tests on a separate assembly. Would also allow for different versioning or deployments, again, of that separate assembly in the .NET landscape. All right?
Sounds good.
Woo! Oh, man, I forgot my water upstairs, Sam. This is the worst day ever.
If somebody's going to ask us to hydrate, we'll be...
I know, and I'm going to... Hold on. We might be able to fix this real quick. Hold on, I'll fix it. Be right back, right? Hold on, I got a water bottle close here. We'll handle this. All right. Handled. All right, we'll go ahead and take that hydrate right now.
There you go. I'm with you.
Thank you.
Jonathan, did you...
Yeah.
Are you looking at the screen right now?
Yeah, but I don't see anything in it, which is strange.
What? I'm seeing stuff. Wait, we're streaming.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
Yeah.
I was going to ask, if you see anything different about me, but if you can't see, then...
I wasn't looking at it specifically. You grew a beard. You got glasses.
I've had that, but let's see. This thing is new. So, so over the weekend, actually, so my back is hurting. I'm getting old. So I had to get into a gaming chair, which gives me just a little bit more like lumbar support. So,
nice.
First day in, so far so good.
First day in?
Yeah.
Like I was telling you earlier, I added some lights behind the scenes for myself. Hopefully it made my background a little bit brighter, although I don't think it really worked. We'll try again. But, you can kind of see some of them in the corner there when I move my arm. Anyway, I had a great week off of vacation, man. It was wonderful. I got to go to the lake and all sorts of stuff.
See, we are aging, right? Dan Siegel in the chat room is saying, you want to have a contest as to who has the bad back? Yeah. I've had back issues.
We'll have a contest, but it won't be that one. But for sure. Yeah, I went tubing on the lake,
Nice,
oh, man. I wasn't, I'm not prepared for that anymore in this point. I got beat up for sure. For sure. But yeah, we'll check in with you next week and see how your back's feeling, Sam. Let's see. Okay, so... Oh, jeez.
Oh, wow. Dan's had several back surgeries.
I told you, Dan, we didn't want to have this competition. Now you're going to go and win on us. Jeez.
Okay, you win. I've not had to have too many surgeries.
Yeah.
But I've struggled.
Yeah, I have not had any. Luckily, I've been pretty fortunate. No surgeries here either. So, let's see. Yeah, standing does help. You're absolutely right. As weird as that sounds, after all those years of them telling us to sit down at a desk in our offices, and now this whole new wave of, now every office has to have standing desks, and well, if you're even allowed to go to the office anymore, who knows? But I'm pretty fortunate to have a desk I can adjust up and down. But I do these sitting, Dan, because if I go up any higher, you can see the rest of my ductwork, and it's just no good.
Yeah, I've seen a few follows go around while we're chatting, so thank you, folks. I think I saw a tweet the other day where somebody said, like, the worst thing about standing desks is you have to stand a lot. Yeah, so it's good to have that option.
It's definitely good. Yeah. I went with the I think it's called autonomous. This one's pretty good.
Oh, nice.
Shameless plug for that. Its character. You're absolutely right, except for the duct tape hanging off of it. Oh, sorry. All right, we're done with that. All right. So again, guys, I think what we're gonna do at this point is we're gonna do two things again today. One, this will cover a recap of the custom content type creation or dynamic module creation. I'm not gonna focus a whole lot of time on it. We're gonna move for it very quickly. If you have a question, though, pop in, let me know. I'm happy to answer it. But we're going to rifle this out really quick, and that's just so we can get access to the API, so we can do some low-level coding in C# to create this custom widget that we're about to implement. So without further ado, I'm already logged in. I'm logged in as admin, very creative. Thank you very much. I'm going to jump into the back end of Sitefinity. We're going to cover two components here. So as we implement this is going to be one of the things that we know. So I've already made the decision, I guess, first off, that these locations actually need to be managed by individuals. And what I mean by that is I'm working as the Sitefinity admin, right? The global admin, the God user, the whatever else, right? I'm not the person who's going to need to manipulate this content, right? Or even create new items. But also the information that came from the business is that they want to handle their websites in a sort of a regional type of apparatus. And what I mean by that is they have restaurant locations all over the world, but they often function a little bit differently, or maybe have some different use cases or whatever the specific need is. It doesn't really matter. But basically they stated to us and said that, hey, look, we have different sort of regional managers of content, right? Okay. As soon as I hear that trigger from a customer, I'm like, one of my first thought is multi-site management. So this is, I think, going to be our first talk into multi-site management. So I'm going to cover this here real quick to talk a little bit more depth about multi-site management and maybe some things that you can accomplish with it, maybe some things that you shouldn't accomplish with it, and maybe some hurdles that you might have to look at as you're implementing a multi-site instance. So let's talk about multi-site. Yeah.
Can I ask, like,
Yes.
what exactly you're about to do here? So you're saying, like,
Right.
you have a worldwide site and you want to have the regional restaurants do their own thing, but within certain boundaries, right? So you want to give them a placeholder which aligns to your site's style, if you wanted to, and then let them, like, do their own thing within a shell. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good explanation of it. Yeah, so long story short, just to expand a little bit deeper on it, is at the corporate level, we want to be able to control the brand or the style or the shell of the thing. So as we create these other roles in the system, they're going to have far less permissions than, say, a global admin or even a lower level admin that we might create. Their sole purpose is really going to give them access to one specific site. So let's take something like breaking the site down into regions of the world. So if we say something like, we want to make our multi-site instances into, again, maybe the 7 or whatever 8 regions of the world, something like North America, maybe Asia, Australia, Europe, or whatever. Again, I'd have to pull up the major classifications of the world. I never remember. But I think that's the way that we really want to look at breaking the site down. Now, what we're going to do in conjunction with that is we're going to create a role for actually each one of these multi-site instances. Nice. And that role is going to simply allow for one thing. Do they get access to or gain access to the site at all? And where do we manage all this stuff? Well, a lot of it's going to be managed up here in this top left-hand corner where we can drop down our sites. Now, a couple other notes about multi-site management. our implementation is going to focus on a branded solution, right? Meaning that somebody's going to control, again, this brand, this style, the look and feel of the site, and the content authors, the editors, the marketers, the business users, whatever, whoever we're delivering this to, they don't need to manage, say, the header and the footer of pages. They really just need to manage the central content of it, right? So as we do that, we have the ability to say, yeah, they should be able to use everything or only use these certain components or whatever. But to pause for a second, that's our implementation. With multi-site management, you can actually control each site differently. Each site could have its own set of page templates. They could have their own set of what we call the resource packages. So if you think about back towards our first and second demonstrations here, where we show how we utilize resource packages, and let me give you a quick visual of a resource package just for memory here. Those are held in Visual Studio. So right now we have the out-of-the-box Bootstrap 4. We created our Coriander Lane Bootstrap 4. I could then create, site 1, site 2, site 3, site 55, whatever, and each one could have its own set of page templates as well as widget templates. So again, these resource packages can be also applied as themes, right? So one other point about multi-site management, we're going to manage our multi-site instances as subdirectories. So when the site goes live, it's going to be corianderlane.com, right? Our regional sites then will be corianderlane.com/North America, Asia, et cetera, right? There are other ways to manage the multi-site instances. You can manage them as subdomains. So we could do North America.corianderlane.com or Asia, so on and so forth. We can also do them as, of course, completely different top-level domains, and do something like corianderlanenorthamerica.com or corianderlane Asia, whatever. Now, the last two that I mentioned there are let me rephrase this. The domain model does require additional licensing. So keep in mind, Sitefinity is a domain-based model. So as you serve content under a specific domain, you just need to make sure you have the license for it. Okay. If you have questions or additional concerns, happy to address those with you. Just reach out to me.
Yeah, but within a certain domain, which is what most folks will do, it's all just one site, and as a God user, you deploy it one time, and it's all in one place, right?
Correct. Yep. And then if you continue to use the subfolder type implementation for the multi-site management, which we'll use, there will be no licensing implications there. But as I create a site here, if I did a different domain, domain.com, I didn't spell it right. This, I would have to make sure I had that additional licensing purchased and applied within Sitefinity. Yep. Actually, for that matter, let's go ahead and create another multi-site instance here, just so we can have it as a placeholder. And I think just for one, and just for sake of an example, we'll do North America, right? America. Perfect. Our domain will be corianderlane.com. That's what we use when we're in production. But this site is in development. Right now, we're just using the localhost domain. So let's use a development domain by saying localhost /North America. Now, this is just going to help us with the routing in IIS or however you might have the site hosted. If you're just running it as an F5 or a play out of Visual Studio, you would need to, put in the appropriate components in here with the correct names. One other thing to note, and I don't know if we've mentioned this along the way, I think we have, but we'll reiterate it now. Sitefinity out of the box supports multilingual. What does that mean? That means you can translate all of your content into multiple languages. It keeps the references between them so they're kind of attached together. Right now, I only have English enabled on this site, so I can't add any additional languages. But the point is, I can actually manage languages per site. So maybe North America needed a certain set of languages, but of course, in our instance, Asia, Europe, each one of those would have its own set of languages as well. So we can easily manage and contain languages, using multi-site capabilities.
Well, I mean, one does not just like drop a bombshell and move on. That's pretty amazing. So, how would you like host that kind of stuff? Like all those resource files you will drop in?
So there's a combination of things for the content itself. So things that are placed into Sitefinity. So something like this page itself, or even this content item that we have here, like this slider.
Yeah.
In order to translate these individual slider items or this page, I actually navigate to that particular area and say, hey, I want to create a new Spanish version of this item. Now, this would be done by somebody who probably knows Spanish. That's somebody, not me. But we also do have an additional component where you can add translations management and automate the process, something with like translate.com or Lionbridge, where you can do it via API, FTP, and this all uses industry standard XLIF format. Now, for the backend, Sam, we do actually have resource files. So you can actually translate the entire backend of Sitefinity. We do have some predefined ones that you can get from our marketplace, things like Spanish, Portuguese, Chinese, Korean, maybe. There's 10 or 15 in there. I don't remember them all. But you can actually translate the back end of Sitefinity. For that matter, if you don't have it in the language that you prefer, don't worry. You can actually export the entire back end language pack of Sitefinity and do your own translations, import it back into Sitefinity.
Sweet. Yeah, I love this stuff.
Powerful.
I love localization and kind of catering to your audience because, again, I mean, we sometimes get siloed into our little world and we don't realize how people are different. And if we can cater to their own tastes, you just drive up engagement for your app and for your website. So, yeah, if you can, and if you, I mean, you should invest the time. I think that's amazing.
Sure. This could also be another. Now, we didn't mention it in our pre-talk, but this could be another, great potential for a reason why to not hand roll a CMS and to look at, a predefined one. Look, most out there have some type of language and translation module. We all know that this is of great importance in this day and age. I can only speak to how we do it, and we'll look into some of it again in depth through these conversations on our calls here.
All right. So before we move on, is it time for our trivia?
Yeah, I think so. Let's finish this process and then
sure.
let's kick off that trivia question. So before I create this North American site, though, I want to point out a couple other things. One, do I want to create an empty site? That's probably fine in this case, but you have other options. Do I want to duplicate pages? So I actually have a number of customers that I speak to who create portals, right? They create customer-specific portals where they need to spin them up. They need to have a unique brand, and maybe they only really need to change a few things about each customer implementation. Here's where something like duplicating pages and settings from an existing site could be beneficial. So maybe you create a base portal site, and you say duplicate it. And now we then create customer 1, 2, and 3 portal sites. You can go in there, simply just change a logo, a color scheme, or something along these lines, and now you have a completely different setup for customer X, Y, or Z. So you can duplicate content or pages from other sites in the system to help facilitate, rapid deployment of either new sites, portals. Sitefinity actually uses this feature for our documents portal. So if you've ever looked at docs.sitefinity.com, and you know how we have different versions of our documentation, so version 12, 12.1, 12.2, we actually utilize multi-site management to do this. So when we go and we create our 13.1, what we do is we actually duplicate our pages from 13.0 and make any additional adjustments to the actual docs. So what that then allows you to do is then we're able to use this selector here at the top, and all this selector is simply doing is just changing which multi-site we're pointing to.
Nice.
Fun little fact for you behind the scenes.
Yeah.
So we do drink our own champagne.
Exactly. Dog fooding. That's how it shows that we have confidence in what we're rolling out.
Absolutely. And, to be fair, progress.com is completely run by Sitefinity. So, we do, again, eat our own dog food, drink our own champagne, whatever you'd like to call that.
Same with any of the sub things that we do, like Telerik.com, Kendo UI, everything is on Sitefinity.
All of them. Yep, absolutely. Okay, 2 more. I think I got, one more step, Sam, and then we can do trivia time.
All right.
So the basic settings are done here. We're pretty set up. Setting it offline, that's completely up to you. The other point to make is if you utilize our add-on called SiteSync, and if you also decide to utilize a staging or content environment, you can actually create these new sites on your staging environment and utilize our SiteSync module to move it to production. So you can even build new sites in a lower level environment that you can actually publish to production without having to touch code or anything else. You know what's funny is that question from Devin just showed up in my stream, which is weird.
No, it did show up mine as well.
Oh, it did? Okay.
So Devin Kenning, thank you for asking a question. And this was exactly what Dan Siegel was asking in the chat room just as we got started. So Jonathan spent a lot of time answering that. So just to kind of recap, it's the integrations. It's the flexibility of deploying multiple sites. It's the flexibility of doing language support for localization. It's the flexibility of rolling out tons and tons of content that look the same, but they're all driven by a custom component or a custom module that you create. So it's a balancing act. What are the benefits of a CMS? That's exactly what we are saying. So a CMS, I mean, it should not be looked at as just like a blog engine. That's just a very narrow version of what a CMS can do. It really is to run these humongous sites that are catering to a worldwide audience, and you want quick edits, and you want a quick way to push out content without reinventing the wheel over and over again. And as a developer, you want your users to have that flexibility, so you can set things up in a custom content in a module and then roll it out, so it's very easy to churn out content as you go on.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy, it's repeatable. From a developer standpoint, it's kind of a similar question of, why would you use jQuery or why would you use Angular? Both of these components are built off of top of something else as simple as JavaScript. Well, you utilize those components as frameworks because they give you a quick starting edge. Typically, a CMS gives you that same type of thing. So if your team or your need is around creating content quickly, fastly, exposing it to multiple environments, CMS is probably a place that you should look. If your requirement is just about, we want to take a listing of data and show it somewhere, maybe a CMS might not be the right choice. It might be a little bit overhead for what you want to do. But I really do look at a CMS, and Sitefinity, is what I know best, but most of them offer a similar type of component here. It is a framework. It is there to help facilitate your business need. It's not meant there to be in the way, or it's not meant there to burden you from creating your custom needs. Well, in fact, if it does, maybe you don't have the right CMS. But the CMS should really be always focused as a framework. It's something that you build upon and with, not against. Or aggressively, saying, it's just going to get in the way. We hope it doesn't. I mean, I know, in my 10 years of experience with Sitefinity, I found every day more ways that I could use it as a framework than writing my own, handwritten custom code to manage, whatever it is. But
no, that's well said. I mean, how long has just Sitefinity been around, as a CMS? 15 years?
15. So we were 2005, I believe, was the original release of Sitefinity, all using Telerik tools. In fact, we still continue to utilize Telerik tools for building out the CMS. So we're reinventing our back end of the system, and we're using all Kendo and Angular to utilize that. So the Kendo Kendo editor. We used to utilize the RAD editor. Now we use the Kendo editor. So.
Yeah, and I think, this is the same argument of how much time you want to spend engineering something when you have hundreds of professional engineers trying to build this thing up over the years. So balance it out. Make sure you have the right tools for the job.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and to executives, sometimes a CMS might have a price tag to swallow, but keep in mind that it's hard to plan and facilitate custom code. And then aside from that, when you have custom code, from the ground up written, what happens when the team leaves or the develop, becomes even more difficult to manage for the long term. We typically find our customers utilize our platform from anywhere from 3+ years. I mean, most of our customers have been on Sitefinity for many years.
Good point.
All right, so keep the questions coming. Thank you very much, Devin. Appreciate it. So back to multi-site, we're going to go through one more screen here. The next screen here, though, Sam, this is where we actually get to pick and choose the features that we'd allow this specific site has to offer. So for our North American site, what should they be able to create? Well, we want to be able to create sliders. We have one other concept to think about here is, should they be able to share content? In this case, they're going to be able to create their own storage of sliders here, so called North American sliders. But if I go change here, I could give them access to potentially the default or the corporate aspect of sliders. For us, we don't need that, so we're not going to turn it on. We're really just going to allow them to create their own storage of sliders. News, we're actually just going to allow them to gain access to just the default news. What does that mean? Well, we're going to go in here, maybe not today, but we're going to go in here and we're going to set permissions. Basically, what they're going to be able to do is they're going to be able to show the corporate news, but they can't create their own storage of their own specific news content. If we decide to later, though, in the future to do it, we can just come simply in here and check a box and move on about our way.
Yeah, and before we move on, Dan Siegel in the chat room had a good point. If we are going to roll our own and do all of this by hand, I mean, there's a cost to this, obviously. I mean, there is a development cost and then there's a maintenance cost. So, yeah, all good points.
Yeah, very, very good point. Yeah, and that's the thing that comes, very difficult about, hand rolling your own is there could be a lot of unforeseen, costs, right? And those things might be that you get so far into it that you realize, oh, I need to purchase a third-party tool and it wasn't originally slated for, or yes, there are those things. Now you can run into the same thing and same situations with the CMS, but as you gain the knowledge and the complexity, or if you decide to utilize something like our pro services team here at Progress, we have a full vetted team to, deliver you a product where we feel like when we deliver a Sitefinity product is you only need to reach back to the development team when you want a new feature. That is the sheer goal of a CMS, or at least in my humble opinion, is I should deliver a product to my end user that they don't need to call me. And you're sitting there and you're like, wait a minute, what did you just say, John? Yeah, I literally just said that. I'm building a product that I don't want them to call me about. But what I mean by that is that I don't want them to call me, is I want them to only call me when there's something that they can't facilitate on their own. Meaning they want a new feature. Oh, I want to be able to compare products. Oh, I want to be able to do this really fancy doomahickey what's-a-majabi, right? Those are the components that they should be calling for you. The everyday activities of creating content, meaning I want a new news article. I need to change TEH to THE, right? I mean, those things, those aren't developer tasks. Those are tasks that should be sheerly managed by a content author or a business user, or again, whatever we're calling them. That is another reason that a CMS can be very powerful, is as you won't have maybe the opportunity to pass on the control to the team who really needs it, and that's the marketers, the people creating the content potentially for the public.
Yep. All right, now I know you are waiting to get into Visual Studio and some stuff as well. Good time for, you let me know when it's time for a trivia. It is.
It is. Right. The time is right now. But before you ask it, so we can give this some time to spin up. I just want to say one more thing about what we're doing here, and then we'll get it spinning up. I want to do one other thing. You see this one here called generic content. Generic content in Sitefinity is actually shared content blocks. I actually want them to be able to create their own storage of shared content blocks, but I also want them to have access to the corporate shared content blocks. Why? Because I'm going to have something like a privacy policy or something like that that I want them to be able to put into their own page structure and share. But I want the corporate team to be able to manage it, control it, and make any modifications or edits. So we're going to check this box here called default content. This is going to allow them to select from the corporate content storage, but also be able to create their own shared content blocks across the system. Okay. So in this case, we've enabled their own storage of sliders, their own storage of libraries, so they can create their own media content. They can create their own libraries. Actually, this brings me one other point. I actually want to create a single source to be able to be shared across all sites. And this is going to be called our locations source. So our locations source is actually going to be a single source that we can share across all sites, where they can upload their images about their locations or menu items or this type of thing. So we'll call it location library or locations. Actually, just locations is fine. So we'll create this, and then we're actually going to enable this, and we're actually going to make it, we're not going to make it the default, but we're going to enable this as well for a storage of libraries, as well as giving them access to the default library. Let me just clarify what I just said there. So what I did here is I actually have a little bit of obvious pre-knowledge about what I need to do here. So let me just kind of reiterate what I'm doing here. So what I did was, was I actually created this location source. So when we create these they're actually called providers in Sitefinity, but these are the individual buckets of content. But what's going to happen is when I go and create our content type in just a moment, like locations, I'm going to need an ability to set permissions to say that everybody's going to be able to have the ability to upload to this specific area. That's where I can create a central storage of these to make management of permissions just a little bit easier. All right. So we got all this set up. We're going to go ahead and create the site. A bunch of stuff is going to happen behind the scenes. Any database tables that need to happen, any relationships that need to be spun up, everything's going to happen behind the scenes. And while it does that, what did I do? Oh, I know what I did. We shouldn't use that because so what happened was this already had a name for that. So let's call it something else. That was my fault. I already had a source called that, so let's call this one locations libraries. Let's call it that instead. That was my fault. I already had something named that. Let's try that instead. All right. There we go. Oh, that was really, really fast, but go ahead and darn, it was really fast. Let's go ahead and run off our trivia there, Sam.
All right, and I actually do have a couple of questions about what you just mentioned,
Yeah.
But let's get this thing up if I can. All right, here we go, folks. Swag time. All right, you have the question up. What version of .NET, and you heard us say this, and you've seen us code in Visual Studio and on top of .NET, what version of .NET is Sitefinity 13 using? Okay, so that's your question. If you know it, fire it away. If you want to look it up, go for it. But this one's fairly new. Sitefinity 13 was released this year.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
Right,
So yeah, think about it and let us know.
About a month ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, about a month and a half ago, I think. I have to double check my release notes.
Yeah, I think that's what sounds about right. So the first correct answer is going to get the swag. Okay.
Yep.
So
that's a T-shirt and some sticker.
Yep.
So
Exactly.
some stickers. Yep.
All right. So while we have this up, in terms of the location libraries, so if you are enabling a child site to have the capability to upload like pictures and news and other things, when you said like a default location, like that goes all the way to where your default site is hosted, like worldwide site is hosted?
So as far as, when we configure modules themselves, no, it doesn't necessarily have to determine where it's hosted. It's really just a separation of the data, right? So in this case, we've now offered 3 different separations or storage areas of the locations library here.
Yeah, but I mean, you can kind of see where I'm going with this. Like, so if your corporate coriander lane is here and you want your restaurant in Australia to use this same child content, then they would like to have theirs stored and delivered from somewhere close by, so like a content delivery node, right? So
Oh, okay. Oh, so we're talking about CDN.
yeah.
In fact, okay. So a couple things in that fact. So Sitefinity actually supports what we call multi-regional deployments.
Nice.
So one, you can actually offer replication of the database as well as the front end node to different regions of the world. So, for example, if you would like to host, let's use Azure as an example because I'm well versed in it. Let's say I'd like to use the North America instance East. Fine, but I also do have customers in Europe, Australia, whatever. So I could actually select an additional deployment location, place Sitefinity in there, create it as what we'll call a child environment, previously probably termed slave, and I'm sure we can't use those things today, but I don't have a better term of it. So we'll call it a child deployment, and you can then do multi-regional. Aside from that, things like media assets, you can actually store in a CDN. So if you'd like to use Cloudflare or whatever AWS has to offer, or Azure Blob Storages in their CDN environments, you can actually set the locations providers to use those CDN so that the media assets are delivered in the nearest location. So it's kind of a multi-tiered thing. There's multiple ways to look at it. You can actually serve the things like resources or media from CDN out of the box with Sitefinity. In order to utilize the multi-tiered deployment, you do need our enterprise level of the application, but you can do multi-regional deployments as well.
Yeah, and it's a very niche audience that will want to do that stuff.
Oh, it's important.
Yeah, absolutely.
One side note to that is if you do decide to use our Sitefinity cloud deployment, we actually utilize Cloudflare,
Nice.
that CDN, to cache the entire front end. So we cache the entire page itself. This helps offer our 99.9 SLA. It also helps offer things like warm-ups behind the scenes. So long story short, with some new APIs that we put in place, like our event, not our event hub, our I'm going blank on terms here. Webhook, there's the right word. With our webhook that we introduced in 12.1-ish, doesn't matter. It's there in 13 now. You can actually do cache and validation via that webhook, so you can alert other platforms. But what it also allows you to do is actually warm up the cache behind the scenes as well. So you can actually implement Sitefinity to say, hey, warm up the cache behind the scenes for a certain period of time, maybe 45 seconds. If it's not done in 45 seconds, go ahead and serve the new page anyway. But this allows you to then cache the new pages behind the scenes and then immediately serve them once they're ready. Woo, man, I'm excited.
Oh, that's pretty sweet.
Oh, I gotta take a break now.
All right, so I'm going to put this up again, folks.
Somebody's got to know.
Yeah. So that's your trivia question of the day, folks. If you know, or if you want to look it up.
Swag.
Yeah, swag waiting for you. What version of .NET is Sitefinity 13 running on?
Right. All right. So, I guess real quick, we can pause. Did you have any other questions about multi-site management, Sam? Or of course,
let's move forward because I'm just thinking out loud as I go along.
Okay, great. So what we're going to do here at this point is now we're going to go ahead and create a new module. And this module is going to be about storing our locations. Now, I'm going to do this pretty quickly, guys. If you see something you got a question about, that's fine. We did cover this in pretty good depth, I think in session 2 or 3. So please review those if you get a chance. That'd be a great place. If you got a question, though, again, fire away. Okay, so when we create a module, this one is going to be specifically about location. So it's going to hold all the information that we need about a location. This might be more than one type of content. In this case, it is, but let's go ahead. So these are restaurant locations, and it gets spell. Whatever. This is just a little information to pass along to users. Next step of the process, again, is to create our content type. So this is going to be the structured information. They're going to be the properties that we expect our users to fill out. So I'm just going to do this real quick. So location. Okay, make sure I spell everything right. All right, title, I'm going to leave it alone. That's perfectly fine. What else do we need? We need hours, right? So we're going to need to supply hours. Whoop, I don't know how that happened. Into the system. Actually, let's pull up our design before we start creating too many things, because we might want to create them in a certain order. Okay, so what all do we need here? So we need an address, hours, job. We need these two. These could be something like an amenity or something along these lines. So in this case, we're gonna use a field where it's like a drop-down list, or actually even better, a checkbox list of amenities that they can check a box for and easily identify. Do they have drive-throughs, ATMs, this type of stuff. We know those things are important nowadays, right? Okay, so sorry, I was just pulling this back up just to make sure that we get all the data. Let's look at the next design here. Let's just make sure we're not missing anything else. So, image. We'll need an image. Title is fine there. What else? I think we identified, so hours. But what I'm going to do, though, is I'm actually going to supply 2 fields for hours, I think. So we're going to have, hours and maybe like additional hours, because you can see they offer in 2 different types of hours here. And in this one, too, we're also going to use some validation, and we'll also look at how we can do things like required fields and some other stuff, which I don't think we got into the last time. I'm just waiting to pull up here real quick. Okay, so let's get this out of the way. All right, so we got the title. Let's do hours. Short text is fine, but here's some of the other options just so we can have it for the recording. So short text is fine. Hidden, I think we want to show it. Any advanced options? We don't need to do any advanced options here. Label, hours, perfect. But we're going to do one other thing. We're going to give a little bit of instruction. So the instructional text should be enter hours following this format. Okay, and the format will be something like what we saw here, where it's Monday through Saturday, 11 to whatever. So we're going to change it a little bit from the design, though, just for the sake of things. Let's do something like this. So let's change the hours format to be more like this. So hours format should be 11 a.m. through 12 p.m. Monday through Friday, something along these lines. And we're actually going to use a regular expression here, which I've already created. It looks something about like this. Oh, this will then allow...
I want to freak out if you do regular expressions to match up that whole hour thing. Oh my god, look at that.
Run! Run, Sam. Run. I'm not going to go into any depth on how I created this or how well it works.
Or how many hours it took.
Don't worry about it, Sam. This is why we have the magic of the internet, right? I feel like I'm on a cooking show right now, and I'm pulling that roast out of the oven.
That's right.
Here it is. Ah.
That's right.
Awesome. But just a couple notes here. We did change it from like a full version of the word to just like a capital version of Monday through Friday, allowing for Sunday to be SU, Thursday to be TH. Okay. So that's our limitations there. We're also going to mark it as a required field. So hours should be required. They have to create it. Okay. Now, the other thing is we're going to do additional hours here. So additional hours. One thing to keep in mind too, though, is I like to use Pascal casing here. First word capitalized, second word capitalized as well. Just as a side note. Now, when this one comes around, though, additional hours, I don't want to require it. They don't need to have additional hours. They could encompass it all in that one. I'm going to make a couple adjustments to the labels. I'm a bit persnickety. I like to have these capitalized. Let's put in this limitations here. I already have that in my clipboard. And I'll put it in the instructional text in here as well. All right, so we got hours, additional hours. What else are we missing here? Address. So hours, address. We can actually reorder these fields in a little bit too if we enter them in an order that might not be desirable in the UI itself. We can actually reorder these. So let's go ahead and get an address field in here. Sitefinity actually ships out of the box with a specific field called address. This includes, street, zip, postal, latitude, longitude, all the things that you would need to create a successful address. Do you want an address map only? In our case, let's just go ahead and do an address form only. We're going to handle the mapping of things on our own with an implementation of an open mapping program. I'm drawing a blank. I think it's just called Open Maps API. Jeez, I'm drawing a blank on what I want to use. It's not for today's conversation, but we will use a different utility to map things. So we're just going to go address form only. Done. Let's add a few more fields here. Let's take a quick peek back. So we got title, we got hours. Amenities. That's going to be important. I think that might be. Oh, and then imagery. Let's do that as well. So let's go here. Amenities. Spelled that right. Of course I didn't. Too many M's. There we go. Instead of a short text, though, let's go ahead and let's do a choices field. And let's also say multiple choices can be selected. That will then allow for us to create a collection of these amenities, and then say, each store gets to pick which one they want. Do you want to use checkboxes? Yeah, that makes sense. Let's go next.
Yeah, I mean, as you're doing these things, like you're answering the question over and over again, like why is CMS over rolling all of this out by hand? This is a tremendous amount of work, and being able to just move around those fields, just reorder, and have your end users be able to quickly add locations, and then you're going to do it all in a map to show them. That's a lot of custom work.
Absolutely, yeah. And once we develop these, Sitefinity takes care of all the database stuff that we need to store the information. It's going to create the backend screens that I need to manipulate and modify. So that's for my business users. They don't even know this stuff's custom. They look at it and they're like, man, it looks just like Sitefinity. We don't have to do really anything else. So we'll make it pretty easy. All right, meeting facilities. I don't know. You got any other amenities you think a restaurant usually has, Sam? ATM, drive-through, meeting facilities, maybe a bar. How about a bar?
Of course. Like that's a deal breaker.
Oh, how about this? Adult. I happen to live in an area where children are not allowed in the bar area, but there are some states around me where a child can, if they're between a. Anyway, doesn't matter.
Wi-Fi.
Oh, duh. Wi-Fi, of course. So let's do bar and Wi-Fi. All right, cool. Okay, so Wi-Fi. So at this point, then, we can also control the individual value. So what I'm going to do here, though, is I'm going to create a text value. I'm actually then going to utilize a Font Awesome graphics and trigger off these key values that I'm placing here to display the correct icon with it. Whoops. Like the little car or the Wi-Fi symbol or whatever. Bar and Wi-Fi. Okay.
Wait. And how is this hooked up? Like, how does Font Awesome know?
So it doesn't. We will actually hook it up ourselves in the UI. But yeah. So again, just a little bit of pre-knowledge that I had of what I wanted to do. We could absolutely do the same thing by leaving the values as something arbitrary. It doesn't really matter. But this way, if there were a text value, I could simply just now utilize like FA-car and grab the value right from here, not having to worry about doing additional mappings and other things. So
yep. And
all right,
like Dan was pointing out, our thing with the bars being closed now. Fun stuff.
Yeah, there's that too. All right. Let's see here. We're getting pretty close. I think we want to do one other thing. Let's go ahead and add an image field. So let's go ahead and add a related media field. But here's where that storage location becomes very important. So this one here, let's go images and next. Here is, again, where do you want to store the content? So keep in mind, when I created some things before, I actually created this locations library here. Now, this will then allow for us to create a central storage of all the data. Why is this important? Well, one reason is I actually want to show all of these restaurant locations on our corporate site. But in order for our corporate site to easily have access to all the sites, say images and other things, it makes it best to create a centralized storage location like locations libraries here. You can also do things like default source for the current site. This becomes important if, yeah, I want to create a module, something like sliders, but I want each multi-site instance to have its own storage or collection of those particular content items. So sliders is a great example. So for sliders, North America can create its own homepage sliders, and so can the corporate site, and so can each additional multi-site instance that we wanted to. But for us, again, in this case, we're going to use this locations library, which we're going to share across all of our sites. And we'll also make it a required field because they should have an image in order to create a particular one. I'm going to allow them to upload multiple images. That way, again, of course, they can, create a slider or do something else. What other types of files? All this is fine for our implementation. No need to change there.
And while you're going on, Jonathan, I'm just going to put this up again. So, folks, we like going probably about an hour and a half on this Sitefinity stream. So you have about 20 more minutes. So think about it. What version of .NET could Sitefinity 13 be running? And keep in mind, just for more context, I'm giving you hints here. It was released this year. So think about what Sitefinity would need to run under the covers.
Yep. Get that swag now. I can tell you, after 10 years of being with Sitefinity swag, you better get it now while it's there. All right. So a couple other things before we do this. Do you want to supply any instructional text? Whatever. We don't need anything in this case, but we did make it required, and let's go ahead and do done. At this point, we're pretty set to go. We don't need to do anything else. The only other thing that you may consider is doing something like allowing permissions per field. This also works really well in the corporate type so Dan, you're pretty close there. There's a little bit more towards to the answer than just that.
So it's like half the story, but you're getting there.
Yeah, pretty close. So allowing permissions. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask. I think that the two parts of the answer is because of the way Sitefinity is just working, carrying the legacy stuff and moving forward the new and bleeding edge stuff. So .NET Core 3, .NET Core itself is good, but it does have dependencies going backwards as well.
Yeah, good hint. We'll see if that can trigger the rest there. Okay, so at this point, permissions per field. So this could also work well in this type of corporate. Yep. Can we get a little more specific about the framework itself?
You're getting there, Dan. It is the full framework. So yes, we support both ways, but it's a little more forward.
Get a little more specific.
Like a little more forward on the yes. So a little more ahead in the .NET framework realm.
Maybe a specific value, and we're almost putting it out there. Another question though out there. What are good framework to start with after learning basics of C#? So, in the context of Sitefinity, Bootstrap 4 would be a great framework to utilize. But in general, for web development experience, I think Bootstrap is an absolute showstopper for learning. So C#, great. Bootstrap 4, awesome. Angular might also be a good component to learn. We actually use Angular for our admin screens of Sitefinity. We use TypeScript, so this would be an area where you can expose additional logic or customizations in Sitefinity. So I would say HTML, HTML5, Bootstrap, Angular, jQuery are all great additional frameworks to utilize in the Sitefinity context, as well as just general, I think, web development. Sam, you want to offer some more on that? I know you have experience with more frameworks than I do.
No, I mean, you said it right. The problem is that these are big things to learn, right? So
Sure.
Let's not try to boil the ocean, because we can easily overwhelm ourselves. So pick something that you feel comfortable with, pick something that you're passionate with, whatever type of app you're building. If it fits the app model, then just invest and learn as much as you can. Because there are lots of things around, and some frameworks are heavier than others and have a steeper learning curve. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Another question out there.
Moshiko777 is asking, what do you use for backend besides PHP and Noches?
So, in all fairness, Sitefinity really doesn't use either. So, Sitefinity is a .NET web application. Hint, hint. We may be or maybe not using the latest .NET framework. I don't know. I do know, but I'm not answering right now because it'll give away the question. So we use C# for our server-side components. You can absolutely, of course, use Node alongside Sitefinity. There's no specific, constraints about that. In fact, we have, the use of NPM scripts, within Sitefinity itself, as well as using Angular for that admin app. No, we're looking for what? How about this? What .NET framework is the current Sitefinity version using specifically? No, we are not using .NET 5.
And then it is released. So it's Sitefinity 13 was released about a month and a half back. So it's out there, and it is using .NET Core 3, like you mentioned, but something a little more modern on the framework side of things.
Yep, good. Keep at it. So all I've done, just as we've been talking here, is I've activated the module just to get Sitefinity churning behind the scenes on the work that it needs to do. So what I'm going to do now, though, with the last 19 minutes or so, is we're going to go ahead and jump into Visual Studio, and we're going to go ahead and talk about creating a new class library. Not Blazor. We're looking for the specific .NET framework that Sitefinity is using. It's marginally a trick question, but not exactly. You've already got some of those tricks out there, but we're looking for the specific framework that Sitefinity 13 is using, specific .NET framework. All right, so what we're going to do at this point is we're going to move into utilizing our Visual Studio plugin, and we're going to also utilize a separate class library to create additional functionality of Sitefinity, and this is going to be a custom widget. So without further ado, let's head on over to Visual Studio. Let's go ahead and right-click on the solution, and we're going to really follow .NET best practices here. So let's go ahead and add a new project. And let's go ahead and do a class library. So I'll just go ahead and search for it. Class library. Whoa, too many S's. All right. Not .NET standard. I need class library, .NET framework. Next. And we want to make sure we're using .NET framework 4.7.2. Oops, I forgot to give it a name, though. Hold on. Let me rename it here. We're going to mess it all up. Let me remove that real quick. I forgot to name it. I got way too excited about creating it. I forgot to give it a reasonable name. That's kind of important, huh, Sam?
Yeah, especially in Visual Studio. Yeah. Visual Studio can be funny. You do not just rename things in Visual Studio.
Oh, no, that's why I removed it. All right, let's try. Let me go through that one more time here. Let's go ahead and add a new project and .NET framework. Again, for the answer of the question, we're looking for which specific .NET framework Sitefinity uses. We're going to actually name this class library coriander lane location. So this is really going to hold all of our logic around our locations module, right? So we'll call it coriander lane locations. Let's go ahead and create that. All right, now that's a little bit better. We don't need this class 1, so I'll just go ahead and kill that off. We don't need any specifics. Now, let's go ahead and do a little bit of scaffolding here. Let's go ahead and add some folder structure here. Let's add a new folder called MVC. That's where we're going to, handle a lot of our MVC components. The next step we're going to go ahead and do is let's go ahead and scaffold out the widget itself. So let's go ahead and right-click on MVC, add. We'll go Sitefinity, and we'll go widget. This will pop up a screen here, and we can go ahead and give the widget a name. What do we want to call it? So this widget itself, we're going to really focus on showing the user's closest location. So let's go ahead and widget. What should I call a widget? Closest location. I mean, that's really, I think, pretty closest location. Again, hardest part of our lives right here. So let's call it closest location. And we'll hit OK. And we're going to let Sitefinity it's going to go ahead and scaffold out some components behind the scenes. Give this a quick second. Do its thing, and let me show my hidden files here. All right, cool. Everything seemed to work. Let me get these included in the project, and we're going to make a couple other quick changes, though.
Can you make your text a little bigger, Jonathan?
I can't in the solution window.
Probably not in the solution. Yeah, but once you open up anything.
Yeah. Okay. Is that good though? 133. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Okay. So perfect. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a first look at what was created here. So we used our Visual Studio tool to scaffold out a few things. A couple things you'll notice though is we got some red lines. Equals bad, right? we all know that. So let's see if we can address any of these just simply by doing it. It's trying to help us with some installations of packages. Unfortunately, those aren't the packages that we need. So let's go ahead and do it a little bit differently. And let's get our Sitefinity Nuget packages that we're going to need to place in here into the scenes here. So what are those? Let's go ahead and talk about it. So let's manage Nuget packages for solution. All right. I like to always manage it at the solution level. Personal choice. Do as you please. But one thing with Sitefinity is as you add class libraries, it then centralizes the package source folder. Side note. So we have some that are installed here, but what I want to do, I'm just going to go ahead and look for the Sitefinity.core, right? And okay, there we go. So we need the Sitefinity Core, and you can see we have Sitefinity 12.2. See, we're not on the latest version of Sitefinity, so one of these shows we're going to do an upgrade, but that's not today. But we want to make sure, though, that we utilize the same package libraries across both, okay? So this one's using 12.2.72.32. So I want to go ahead and install that same version on the Coriander Lane Locations project. So let's get 12.2.32. Okay, so that's the latest internal patch of 12.2. So we'll go ahead and grab that, and let's get the Sitefinity Core installed here. So let's add this Nuget package, accept all the goodies.
While you're doing that, in the chat room, Moshiko777, Sitefinity is a CMS. It's a content management system that automates a bunch of things for you as you're building a big website and you want to build in integrations and you want to deploy it everywhere.
Absolutely. Yep. Thank you, Sam. We're going to add another package here. Oops. It's going to be for data access. So let's go data. And again, all I'm doing right here, guys, is I'm really just using the search feature to look for the things that I already have installed. This helps me just make sure that I install the same and the correct packages into Sitefinity. So we're going to look for the data access core here. And we got 12.18.11, 12.18.11. All right, so we'll make sure we install that one. And realistically, that's probably the two that we need, but we'll go double check here in a second. All right, what else are we missing? Sitefinity.web.mvc. All right, let's see if we can get this to build real quick.
And while you're doing that, Mishako 777, does it have solutions for front end? Yes and no. Depends on what you want to do, but yes, you can mix and match. You can bring in whatever you want.
All right, system.web. Did it resolve? All right, what else are we missing? Looks like we're missing some MVC components here.
Visual Studio is also having its Mondays.
Yeah, I know, right? Give me my stuff. All right, well, let's see which, let's get that in there. So let's go back here real quick. And let's just look for what we got as far as MVC. I probably want this one here. So let's get that installed on Coriander Lane specifically. And this is just and again, guys, I'm just looking and comparing to what Sitefinity installed with my Telerik.sitefinity.all package and just using it so that I use the same package versions for both. Oh, still not quite there yet. What else am I missing?
And we got, 10 more minutes left here. If nobody else has a better answer, I think Dan has gotten the closest.
Dan deserves it.
Yeah.
Dan deserves it. Just to let you know, the answer was presented on the screen just a few moments ago.
I was looking at the dependencies that you had in the Nuget package. I was like, oh, that's it.
It wasn't answered there, but it was actually answered when I created this particular project. So, one last hint. But no, I think you're good to go. Let's see. What we're still missing. Whatever's going on here. Let's just do a quick clean on that just to see if that addresses. Nope, still missing something here. Let's see what's going on. Let's see here. No methods are over. All right, we're still missing the system.web.mvc.
Yeah, that sounds like a project level, like something very basic system level thing that's missing. That's
all right. Well, yeah, we failed again. Okay, let's go ahead. Did this not install correctly? What happened here? Thought I installed that. Maybe I forgot to click install. Oh, no. What? Oh. I was scoped specifically to the Sitefinity source and it didn't like that. So let me try that again. All right. Hopefully this should address that last issue there. All right. Nope. Still missing something. Bah humbug. All right. Let's see what's going on here. See if this finishes, or once this finishes, let's go see what else Oh, I know what I'm missing. Okay, so Sitefinity has this other component about it. It's called Feather. Feather is the terminology used for our Mvc components. And basically what missing here is the references to our Feather version of Nuget packages. I forgot to add those in there as well. So let me let this build finish. Yeah, it failed there. So let's go see if we can identify those. Let's see if Visual Studio will try to give us some help here. No, still not quite. So let's go ahead and back to manage our packages here. This case, we're going to look for Feather. So Feather. And we actually just need the core components of it installed into the additional class library. So let's go ahead and add again. Let's make sure we're on the correct version or the same version as we're using here, 12.2, 7232, 12.2, 7232. Yes, I know it's not the latest, but it is there. All right, that should be our last thing if my memory serves me correctly, which it probably doesn't. All right. Oh, you hear me again?
Yes, I hear you.
Sorry about that. My headset died right in the middle of my thing. But okay, sorry for the quick facial and switch here. All right, let me accept that here real quick and build this, and I think we're good. Okay, so again, guys, what we did here was we added in the Nuget packages that we needed from Sitefinity. Typically, you need 3. That's Sitefinity.core, probably Feather.core, depending on what you're trying to do. Definitely for developing custom widgets, you need Feather. And then you need the data access core functionality. Those are the Nuget packages that you typically need when you're building custom components in a separate class library. All right, so we finally got it to build. Yay for us. There's one other thing that we want to do before we go ahead, and that's any flat files, so non-compiled files. You actually need to set their properties to build action of embedded resource. This will just help Sitefinity know where that widget will live. One other thing I'd like to do is point out this controller toolbox item. So Sitefinity will actually register this custom widget in the toolbox. Now, we haven't pulled up the toolbox today, nor have we gone into any page editing, but just as a reminder, and please look back at other videos. I don't think we're going to get, actually, we should be able to get there today, but this is actually going to create its own section and register this specific widget in the toolbox item in a section named custom widgets. For us though, we actually want to create our own section, and we're just going to go ahead and call it Coriander Lane. These are going to be for our specific custom widget. So Coriander Lane, those are going to be our custom widgets. So this will actually do all the things that we need to do. So now as soon as I build the project and run it, then this toolbox item will be available to drag and drop on a page. So as long as we can proof that out today, we'll save the building of the component for next week. So let's go ahead and see if we got this to build correctly. So I'm just going to go ahead and reload the back end here. That went way faster than I expected. So let's make sure. Oh, I know why it went way faster than expected. Sitefinity didn't actually see any changes to the project. Do you know why? Because I actually didn't reference this class library that we added. What I forgot to do was come over to our Sitefinity web app and add the reference.
It's funny how
you got a duh on SpongeBob there for me.
no, it's just funny, like how like from experience, like, oh, that happened too fast. Should not have happened that fast.
Been around the block, Sam. Oh. All right. This should then, so it went way too fast. Again, I knew that the site would need to reload or recompile. So let's go ahead and now rebuild the project with our reference in there to our Coriander Lane.locations. Now, Sitefinity will take care and handle all the registration process of that widget. Okay, so we're up to date. We're succeeded. Now, when I reload this, we should get our Sitefinity loading gears. And that'll indicate to me as the developer that Sitefinity, in fact, is basically reloading, the cache in the DOM. Okay, so I think this will, as soon as this loads up, we're going to drag and drop it onto the page just to show you the components of it. And then next week, we will finish building out the customization of utilizing some low-level C# APIs, as well as building out, say, like our own REST service as well. So, hey, we loaded up here. So let's go and head over to pages. Actually, this will be fine.
And let's just take the home page just as a quick example here, and let's see what happened. So as long as everything worked appropriately, we should have a new widget in our toolbox over here on the right-hand side. So let me collapse this one here, and let's see here. Uh-oh, we're not seeing it yet, so something is not quite working right. So let me see. Sure. Okay, succeeded. Uh-oh, might have to do some more troubleshooting here. Title, closest location. Name, okay, title. Section, oh, you know what I did, guys? Section name can't have spaces in it. That was my bad. That was my bad. Let me do this again. Let me build this real quick, and we're gonna go a minute over time or two, but this should fix and address the issue. So doesn't look like yeah, I shouldn't have spaces in there. So let's try this one more time here. We can actually just go ahead and reload it right from here. That way we're on the edit mode and we can see that everything worked. So sorry about that. I shouldn't have put a space in there. So give this about 30 seconds to reload here, and then we'll prove that our custom widget is working. And we'll have a happy dancing SpongeBob, hopefully.
So while we're waiting,
Yep.
Shall we just kind of provide the answer for the trivia thing and declare Dan as the winner?
Absolutely.
So,
Dan is the
yeah, so the question was, what version of .NET is Sitefinity 13 using? And I'll let you respond.
Yeah, so I mean, Dan gave great representation. So he was actually technically correct. So Sitefinity will function with .NET Core, as well as Sitefinity will function with the .NET framework. So he had answered 4.5. So in theory, that is technically the correct answer. But we were actually looking for the specific framework, meaning we were using .NET 4.7.2. So as I created that class library today, we used that specific framework version of .NET 4.7.2. I think for 13.1, I think we're slated to be on .NET Framework 4.8, just as a side note.
No. I mean, how does Sitefinity, like, what aspects of this does it depend on framework full as compared to core? Can you just pick one based on the things features you're using, or do you have to have both?
Yeah, so core, you would need to implement really kind of on your own, meaning you would need to bring in the components needed. So everybody will be using the .NET framework out of the box, right? Now, when you get into the core components, that's when you need to start potentially bringing in other things. There is a actual separate team that you can work with at Progress for the core implementation. This is in what we call our customer technical preview, meaning we have a new building apparatus. So we have a new page builder for core, and then we have a new front-end framework rendering engine as well. So they can walk you through the process to getting it set up, utilizing it. And in fact, you guys can have a huge impact into how it's built, because we're actually looking directly to you, customers and implementers, how we should utilize .NET Core. So.
Indeed. All right. Yeah, then forcing people to update. We still ship 4.5 because we don't want. Yeah. I hear you. Yeah, it's just dependencies in 4.7. But you are the winner. You are the winner for the swag. Yeah.
So if you could either whisper Sam or myself. Dan?
I actually know Dan. Yeah, he's a good friend, so I know his email very well. So you are the winner for the Sitefinity swag.
Yeah.
And we'll send things your way. Okay.
So it looks like, yeah, guys, I'm still having a little issue about getting this registered right now. So it looks like I'll have to do some investigation and potentially come back with an answer next week, but I'm not getting my widget to register properly. So I'll have some answers for you next week about what happened there. But just as maybe a predecessor or what's the word I'm looking for? That's not what I'm trying to do here. But for next week, we're going to finish the implementation of this custom widget, which will include C# code, JavaScript, Kendo. It'll also include Magic. And no, I'm kidding. But no, we will be, again, finishing the implementation of this custom widget where the user is going to hit our homepage and then it will look at their location. So we're going to use the GeoIP database that Sitefinity ships with. And we're going to use that to find their current location and see if we have any restaurant locations nearby.
Now, did I just see like the part of the location wizard show up in Sitefinity? Or maybe that was just like it said like dragged stuff there.
Yeah, so we got our sliders here, but yeah, for some reason I'm gonna have to check into why it's not registering appropriately. It should have just.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, it's not there. So we do have a locations one, but it's not the exact same. Not the exact same one. So.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, you've been talking nonstop for like an hour and a half, so this is good progress, and we shall take this up right from where we leave here today, and that will be next Monday. So come and join us for our Sitefinity Mondays next week. In the meantime, if you have time this week, we have like 5 or 6 other streams going on. So we love you all. We love that you come and hang out with us. Dan Siegel, thank you for taking the time to hang out and chat with us. Same with Devin and Mashiko. Thank you all. We love you. And thank you, Jonathan, for teaching me all the ins and outs. And this is fun stuff. Now, before I go, I actually am seeing something nice going on. So our good friend Chris Gardner, known as Freestyle Coder, he's talking about Azure DevOps, which may be relevant if you're handling web applications and their deployment. So I'm going to hand you folks over to Freestyle Coder. All right? That's it from us, and bye-bye.